Bandwidth for First Updates Now is supported by AndyMark. Are you competition ready? Go to andymark.com and keep your team inspired. And by the Blue Alliance. Keep up to date on all live and archived First Robotics events and team stats at thebluealliance.com. First Updates Now is brought to you by Twitch. Fun is now a Twitch partner and offering some awesome subscriber-only benefits. Subscribe today or get a free subscription each month when you have Amazon Prime by linking your account and clicking subscribe.
All right, everybody. Welcome back. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We were getting a few things sorted out, had some audio problems, but hopefully you can hear us now. We're really excited to bring you guys tonight's episode of FUNalysis. We've got some great things planned, like breaking down the minimum competitive concept competition, the MCCC. We're going to be talking about power-up coaching strategies. We're going to be talking about what we think about the game, doing a little bit of roundtable. But most of all, we want to be answering your questions. So join us on chat. Tell us what you want to hear about, and we'll try to answer those questions, try to keep it to the strategy stuff, because that's what we're here to bring you. So joining me tonight, we've got some amazing guests. Our first one, Mr. Karthik Kanagasabapathy. Karthik, say hello.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
And also from the Midwest, joining me is Mr. Nick Lawrence.
Hey everybody, great to be here.
All right. And one quick note about the business. Don't forget to make sure to tag at First Updates Now with any questions or comments that you would like us to discuss during the shows. And we are going to be having a giveaway today. Our prize today is a set of 4 Battlehawks, courtesy of Team 1720, the Fixed Gears. Let's bring on Tyler, our producer, to tell us more about this.
Thanks, Mason. I'm here, and thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. Man, I tell you, Skype is a beast of its own. But hey, everybody, once again, if you're interested in the giveaway, we definitely appreciate the Fixed Gears with their Bathawk. I'm going to try to get up on screen so everybody can see that, hopefully in a second. If not, I'll put it up in just a moment while they're going. But yeah, if you're interested in winning, all you got to do is make sure you either follow or subscribe, and then we're going to have a keyword to give away later on as well. So thank you to the Fixed Gears 1720 for the Bathawk giveaway.
All right. So before we get too deep into the detailed stuff, I just want to hear you guys, Karthik, Nick, what do you really think about this game? 2018 Power Up is a bit of a different beast than most games we've seen before. Nick, what are your initial thoughts on it?
When I first saw this game, the thing I was most excited for was the fact that the robots probably don't have to change significantly for the game to evolve, where you can play it at one level with the same robot and change the way you have the cadence to the match, where you're managing the switch for half the match and the scale for the other half, or basically just evolve your strategy without having to do the arms race of like redeveloping a mini bot deployer or a can grabber or something that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, those are definitely a nice flavor to not have to chase something all season long, or even like dialing in a shooter all season long. Karthik, what were you going to say?
Right there, Mason. I'm really excited for our first competitive pick-and-play game since 2011. If you think about it, 2012 was a shooting game, 2013 was a shooting game, 2014 was a shooting game, 2015 was kind of a pick-and-place, but you weren't really playing an opponent. 2016 was a shooting game. 2017 had the gears, but like this is like a pure pick-and-place, and it's back and forth. You're placing in the same areas, and so I think the dynamic of watching the scales go up and down is going to be really cool. So I'm just excited for some different design paradigms, but also strategically what I'm most excited about is we have a completely different scoring paradigm. So this is something that none of us have ever seen before. We're all used to, you complete an action, you get points for it. Now you complete an action at a space and time, and you get a series of points for it for as long as that action is valid. You'll often be completing actions and getting no points, but you will be helping ensure or helping get you closer to points. So,
and there are some actions that are super valuable and valid that don't score you points, like continuing to load up your switch, for example.
And so I think it's just going to take a lot of getting used to for everyone, including the veterans in the game. I think this is a little bit of a leveler, because if you're walking into FRC, you've never been to a match before, you are in the same position as like experienced drive coaches as, like Nick and Mason are at, because this is brand new. So it'll be interesting to see who figures this stuff out first. And I think there's going to be a lot of similar looking robots, but I think strategy is going to be a big thing. And I think week 1 and week 2, the teams who figure out how the scoring works and how to best utilize things and to make the right trade-offs are going to be the teams that really benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it's such just a different paradigm. There's nothing that parallels it from past games, so we can't go back and really go back to the books and really understand, the flow of the matches. You got to go really use some imagination here to guess how the match flow is going to go. And for me, what I'm most excited about is every match isn't going to look the same. There's a lot of back and forths, and I think you get to the playoffs and you think about so many past games, Alliance finds a winning strategy that works for them, and they just hit that same strategy every single time. And, the closer they can do to hitting the exact same execution, the closer they get to winning their matches. Where this game, I think Alliances can come out and do different things. If they bum rush one of the switches or the scale, put 3 robots on scoring in one place, these things have real advantages, and that's not something we've really seen before in first. There's a lot of cool supply and demand. There's, getting out early to create advantages. And I'm really excited to see how teams take advantage of that as the season goes on.
Yeah, and the dynamics of the power-ups is also a new thing, too. I mean, sure, we've had game pieces that have significant effects on maybe like the spoilers from 2007, which would cancel out the value of game pieces, where we have a temporary spoiler, so to speak, with Force, where you can take ownership of the scoring locations on the field. That's the thing we haven't seen for a long time as well. And I think a lot of teams who figure out how to play the power-ups correctly and when to play them are going to be successful, too.
I also really enjoy the point values of the different elements of this game. The scale being such a harder challenge because it's so high up in the air, is still only worth the exact same number of points as the switch, which is kind of one of the big issues with so many of the other first games of the past, where the high goal is worth more points because it's more challenging, but it just means the teams who can do it just run away with the scores, where in this game the scale is just another place to score, and so it opens up more gameplay, but it doesn't actually equal any more points, so it doesn't have quite the amount of value that it has in other games where there's a high goal and a low goal. I mean, you think last year with shooting in the low goal, the low boiler, I mean, it was a worthless amount of points, and nobody did it because you just couldn't convert to anything in the game. Here we have a low scoring option that's very valuable and necessary to play the game. Okay, so we're going to dive down into some of these details here. Once again, I want to encourage you guys to join in the conversation, leave some comments, and tell us what you guys think. And we're going to be going to that minimum competitive concept competition. Karthik's got some great analysis for that. But we're going to do that in a bit. But first, Nick, I want you to talk a little bit about the MCC robots, the viability of those in this power-up game. There's teams who aren't going to be able to do everything especially well. So how can these teams build a robot that's going to keep them competitive, that's going to keep them playing in tournaments, and ultimately find success this season?
You touched on it a little bit when you were talking about how the switch and the scale are equally valuable, with the exception of the rank point you can earn during autonomous. The key, that right there being them balanced, is the key to these MCC robots being super valuable. If the scale was worth double or triple, for ownership time, I think we'd be having a different conversation here, but the Everybot and the West Coast Products MCC robot, as well as the Team Orion robot, that all are some kind of super simple get cube to the switch as fast as possible robot. I think that those robots early on are going to be super annoying to play with because they'll be so good and so much faster than the scale robots at depositing cubes in their scoring locations. And I think that just the strategy of either whether you pick to flood your switch to maintain ownership, or you pick flood their switch to guarantee that they don't have ownership, or you do some kind of balance of both with a fast little robot, that's going to be extremely valuable, and it's going to let the scale robots really, really shine, and let the scale robots focus on what they're good at too.
Definitely. I'm just so blown away that we can even have, MCC robots that are competitive. I really went in deep and watched a lot of the robot in 3-day videos and really tried to evaluate them. And there was a couple, for me, it was the Team Elijah built an amazing, simple grabber with an arm that went around to drop off the cubes on the backside. It was such a simple robot. It didn't have a fancy intake. It just had a very simple arm, and it was able to play so much of the game so well. I mean, I just thought that was super exciting. I thought it's going to make a lot of really exciting matches this season.
I mean, so we talked a lot about this on Candidly Speaking last week, but there was 3 or 4 MCC bots that just blew me away this year. Greenhorns in Minnesota, I'm going to probably butcher these names. Snow Problems, and then the 118 Every Bot, and then Week 6. People just found simple ways to be really effective at this game, and I hope lots of teams will take this approach because it's easy to get distracted in this game because there's some really high-end challenges, like trying to lift it. Like the scale's high-end enough, but trying to lift teams, trying to lift 2 teams, like that stuff is for hard. And I hope that a lot of teams don't get distracted by those big, exciting goals of just overloading a switch, because destroy a switch on either side of the field insanely valuable to any alliance. And like people were talking about, oh yeah, some of these MCC bots, they'd be good like 2nd round picks. I'm like, these MCC bots are going to be like, they could be the first pick overall. Like,
no, most of these MCC robots are easily my first pick. When I know that if I'm a robot that's building a scale robot, I want somebody who is able to take care of either the switch or even the vault, which a lot of these robots can do.
An event that's flooded with these types of simple but effective switch bots for upsets coming from the 6, 7, and 8 alliance, because you get 3 of those together. You can do you get 2 of them together with someone who's adequate and just can keep the scale matches, and then you tactically use your force power up, your boost power up, then you really are onto something here. So these MCC bots, unfortunately, as much attention as they're getting, I think a lot of teams are kind of discounting them, because I think a lot of teams are doing that. Oh, well, that'd be nice for other teams to do, but I'm still going to work on my switch bot double lifter that's going to drop teams every match. So
I know. I mean, but like, I get it that a bucket doesn't seem very sexy, but when I watch back and forth and nail less than 5-second cycles of putting up toads, I mean, that just swarms the game. I mean, it is almost a game breaker. It is so good at it, and it's so basic and simple. Like, it bums me out if people think that they need some fancy roller claw intake to play this game well, because you don't. Like, buckets are badass, man.
I would be so happy if we are wrong right now, where more teams build these robots and scale robots, and everything goes the way it should. I really hope that's the case.
Yeah,
I mean, when we get into the MCC match, I'm going to focus on every bot. But like I said, Bucket Town is a real place that I want to move to, and they've also got like a little roller claw intake on the front, so it can do the exchange and that pile of cubes right there. There's so much so last year, one thing I didn't like about the game was so I liked it in that a team could build a super simple robot and be effective, but I almost thought it was like too simple. Just like, you drop a gear into a slot, then you drive and your human player pulls it out.
Yeah.
Here, you're building something simple, but you're actually doing something. The robot is active. It's not a passive participant. It's going to grab that tote. For a lot of teams out there, you build this simple. If you got one of those like awesome drivers, you combine an awesome driver with this Bucket Town bot, and it's a crazy show it can put on. And what's really interesting is when we jump into the MCC match, like there's a team that's playing defense on the Bucket Town bot because it's so effective. And so if you're already meriting defense and teams have to consider what you're doing, then you're a huge asset to any sort of alliance, because that's one less robot that's actually scoring cubes.
Yeah, and I don't know. For me, like, I'm watching this video we got playing now of Week 6 Robot in 3 days, and it's just a lot of really fancy stuff, trying to have flip out intakes and conveyor belt stuff, and it's not as effective. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more things to go wrong, and it's kind of a fancier level, and I hope teams look at that and get discouraged from trying to add all those bells and whistles, and just stick to the basics and the simple. It is an easy challenge, right? Like, it is a very approachable challenge. You don't have to add a bunch of fancy stuff to be really, really good at this game.
Going against like my sales hat logic, I do hope that some people are not too distracted by all the lift kits out there in the world that might bridge some of the gap, because I hope that doesn't distract them from the value of these MCC robots.
Yeah, so
I think we're all in agreement on that. The MCC robots are flipping. Like, these ones specifically, there were some MCC robots, please stay far away from. Like, they were just, not. But these ones that we're talking about, the whole MCC concept and this competition was...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, great job to First this year creating a challenge that we can be having these conversations and not saying that it's just going to be a battle of the elites. These are definitely real robots that you need on Alliance to help play a role. I mean, should we go in and Karthik, are you ready to break down some of the MCCC match for us?
I am all about doing the CCCC, CCCP. I don't even know, but I'm down for it. I'm going to try and break this down as best I can, but this game is hard to follow without an audience display, and I think it's going to be evident as soon as we get into this match.
I mean, yeah, but real quick, do you remember before YouTube, we used to have Real Player whenever we had to watch matches,
man.
And now we have a real stream at week 1. It's just it's just such a time to be alive.
I remember it was such a big deal. Scrimmages, and it would be week 6 of the build season, and you're scrambling to finish your robot, and you get a projector, and you project this grainy thing which looked 8-bit, which is kind of timely for this year, and everyone would be watching that with bated breath because your first time seeing what these robots do.
Yeah.
It was week 1, and we're seeing an actual competition to help visualize stuff, and it's. I remember the pre-YouTube era, and I remember when you didn't. The coolest thing about going to your first event, but it was teams on creating the robot to see what Beatty built and to see what Mustang built, because that was now you see everyone's robot except for 2056's early, so it's it's whatever, but the stuff now, I think it opens up lots of ideas. I think there's dangers because I think groupthink can become a thing when you see so much video early. I think teams, their eyes are open. I definitely was not thinking, hey, just build a bucket with a shoulder joint. So,
right.
I think we're getting ready.
Let's take a look in detail at this match and see what things we can learn from it and see if it exposes some of the strategy of First Power Up.
Want to say in this match is it's kudos to everyone for getting this whole field set up. Now, parts of the reason it's hard to follow is because their field doesn't have any LEDs or lights, and you can't tell which is which color. So they got tape there, which is great, so you can see where the red alliance is and where the blue alliance is. Panels. So the red alliance switch panels. It's blue on the left. For the scale, it is red on the left. And for the other switch, it's really hard to tell from the angle, so we're not even going to focus too much on that action here. We're not going to give you, this is not a detailed analysis of the match. We just want to show you cool things that happen in this match so we can talk about them. So let's jump into autonomous mode and see what these robots do. And first of all, it is week -5 and robots have autonomous modes. That's a totally different world for me. One robot crossing the field by accident in auto. Please don't be the team that does that.
Never mind the fact that these matches are better than the week 0 matches of days past.
2 matches of days past, to be completely honest. Okay, and so in the driver control right now, and the every bot going right into the pile here, and grabs cube, and it's got one on the switch. Switch is even right now. So I want to pause the match right now for a second. This match is there's only one team that can do the scale. So before about how the switch is super important, these simple switch bots. If you run into a match where one team can do the scale, because they're going to own the scale. So you need to take control of your own switch before that happens to make sure you lock in points. To come back against something like this is effective use of your power-ups. You're going to have to force that switch over to yourself for some of the match, and you're going to boost your scale when you have it. So, see, if I was playing a team, an alliance where my alliance is only switch scorers, and they've got a scale score at the start of the match. I'm going to probably have 2 robots on them to keep them as far away, just so I can get a lead on the switch and start accumulating points before they can. Because it's all about when you get that lead. It can't be taken back. So you want to postpone that as much as possible. This match. That the switch robots are much more effective at doing the switch. The scale robot is doing the scale, and that just kind of makes sense with trade-offs. So we'll continue to watch to see how this plays out to see when control is established.
Yeah, so much about this game is getting out to an early lead on getting control. I mean,
the overwhelming offense is the key. And so you see right now, Red has taken the lead on the switch, while the scale has not been scored upon yet. So Red's accumulating points now, accumulating points. Notice, if you want to pause for right now, of the wooden scales, and Nick, you've seen these more recently in person at FTA training, but like right now we got 2 cubes on blue, 2 cubes on red, but blue is clearly winning and accumulating points. So
yeah, the position of the cubes is a big deal. You can see that cube on the one side is partially resting on the fence, whereas the other 2 cubes are fully supported by the plate of the scale. That is a big difference. That scale is just not going to be balanced, or that switch is not going to be balanced that way. Yeah.
Something we haven't seen yet in the robots that have been showing up on Chief and showing up on YouTube is we've seen a lot of teams just kind of like chucking their cubes onto panels. Going to be a lot of value in the team that can really place it where they need it to be placed. Like you're going to want to be able to have that quick release early on in the match, just get it on, but to really manipulate and get the scalar switch where you need it to be. The scale to see what this scale robot, how long it's going to take for them to get that cube up.
yeah, and when I first watched this, my first inclination was that, robots will be so much better after 6 weeks of build, but, really digging back into the archives of how well robots performed in 2011 and what they really looked like at week 1 competitions in 2011, I mean, it's hard to build a robot that goes that high up in the air and can drive, controllably and deliver a payload to the right place. I mean, it just doesn't happen easy. And we've got a lot more COTS stuff available now to help teams, but it is going to be difficult at a lot of places for the scale bots to be successful. And so I think this is realistic.
And before we resume here, I want to piggyback off Mason's point, but had robots going really high, but the cube barely weighed anything. Pound cube. Also, with like a lot of people are building these roller claws similar to like what 254 and 1114 had in 2015. Claws. You're lifting a lot of stuff up in the air. Teams have not gone this high in a long time. Of lighter robots, teams trying to maximize acceleration. Smaller drive bases this year, hoping to optimize for a climb and also trying to increase their ground clearance. All that comes together is a recipe for tipping robots. So that's going to be something really interesting to see as the season goes along. Get this match going. There we go. And again, the scale robot is struggling a little bit to get all the way up there, and there's a lot of action going on the switch. You see that the 4587 robot was playing a little bit of defense on the Everybot. That's how powerful the Everybot is. That it's being defended already. I missed it that there was actually 2 robots that were on the scale. So now the scale's been taken, and that scale's not coming back. So the battle is over the switch, and this one switch is being overwhelmed right now by the Blue Alliance. So the Blue Alliance has control over one scale, and they're not letting the Red Alliance take control over a switch. That's a win. That's just a win at this point.
Just there? That was a robot without any mechanisms that just got. If the little bottom right, it's like a blue bumper numbers on it or whatever. On the bottom right corner, this robot has no active mechanism. It's a shelf. They get a key from the portal. They bring it to the switch, and they just pop it on there without any active mechanism.
Wow.
Cheesecake, anyone?
Right now is a good time in the match for a force, maybe? Like, this is what you need for, because now, then work on developing your lead so then you can play a boost coming out of it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about these different, power-ups is that you can, try to strategize with your alliance of play a force whenever you're hurt, but, do it whenever you're building your comeback. Timing these things out right is a really neat aspect, or use your boost and then play hard defense to protect your boost. I find that, you can get multiple robots working together after playing one of these power-ups to really use it well.
And I mean, this is the first time where we really had a dynamic element in the game since 2007. 2007 with the spoilers, where you would introduce it at a certain point in the match. You had control over when you could introduce it, but it was really important that you introduced it strategically.
Mm-hmm.
In these matches, like, if you come into the match and say, hey, I want to play 4 set, because you're just not going to be optimized. Your drive coach and your human player have to be evaluating what's happening on the field and knowing when to play. So maybe you might have a list of scenarios of if this is like play when this happens, play when that happens. But with this new scoring system, matches can become unwinnable at a certain point. There's no possible way of coming back.
Yep.
Use your power-ups effectively. And that's so important. The flip side is, once I get that big lead, I want to have power-ups that are saved so I can really jam it in you if you're going to try and come back on me.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I can't tell. Is it still playing on there, or is it?
Us right now.
Yeah. There's a question for the audience that I think kind of relates to what you were just saying. If you don't mind, Jesse K from 1885. Ask, what do you think the most important piece of pre-match coordination between the alliances is going to be for the qual matches?
I haven't talked about it much here because not much happened in Autonomous, but I think it's Autonomous because there's a guaranteed rank. There's a chance to get a ranking point there, but it requires a lot of coordination, especially since you don't know which side is going to be red or blue. Mm-hmm. So it's not like before you could just set up and have a drive straight. So I think that coordination to make sure that one robot ends up scoring on there. So you could have one robot's the designated red scorer, one robot's the designated blue scorer, and then you read from the FMS that red's gone, so now I'm going to run my scoring one while the other one's just going to drive a diagonal, for like just the most simplistic things. But the pre-match autonomous coordination, like that ranking point, like think about this. This is a ranking point that your opponents can't affect. They have no ability to stop you from getting it. This is solely on you. It's a 15-second challenge. Last year was a little bit like that with hitting the hopper and auto and but so few teams could do that. Did a challenge. This is a 3-team coordinated challenge. That's more like everyone's like, oh, just drive straight, but like you're gonna to do it well. Like you might have one hotshot team that just knows that they can always hit the panel whether left or right. Have teams who can really just kind of only drive straight. So then it's like, do they have the internal logic to allow for them to not try and release a cube? Because the worst thing's going to be, and it's going to happen, is when both robots drive forward, you on that panel, and then you don't get your switch.
Yep.
The autonomous is going to be interesting because those hotshot teams are going to get carried away in it because they will have the right autonomous to make the right decision on which way to go, left or right. But the part no one realizes, or less people realize, is that they've got the teams that go out there, look at their qual schedule, and go find all of their partners and make sure that they have a working drive straight autonomous and check all their I's and dot all their T's and add their semicolons and no divide by zeros or any of that nonsense going on in this code.
Our team priority list was very different this year in the sense that one of the highest things on our list was making sure every single one of our qual partners drives so we get that ranking.
Which is great. Like everybody wins in that situation. The hotshot teams who wants to be successful and can afford all that work, they go out there and they do it. But the real winners are all these partners who are going to get the help from hotshot teams to write a successful autonomous that then they can just reuse every single match. It's not like a cheesecake that they take off your robot whenever it's done. It's software. You get to keep it and you get to learn from it.
And if I'm like an everybot, if you can finish super early and really focus on a center auto, which is red or which is blue, and goes to the scale, that allows your hotshot partner, you were going to go for the switch, to go for the scale.
That's right. Yeah.
30 points, and not even have to worry about the switch. So that's super cool. The match is still playing here, but I think we kind of talked our way through this. Some robots. The platform is smaller than anyone thinks. Getting 3 robots on, everyone's talking about, I want to lift 2 robots. Just try and get 3 robots on the platform to get them to fit. It is very, very tight. I didn't really realize how tight it was until I started watching this video, but it's size robots. If you have one wide robot on there, it is iffy. And so that's something to watch for in the end game.
And one of the things I really recognized watching this was one of the robots went to try to go climb, it felt really early in the match. It was probably about 30 seconds left in the match, and just watching their, the switches and the scales kind of just lay frozen for those last few minutes. I mean, or not minutes, for those last 30 seconds. And, the score kind of gets locked up, but in a traditional game, it would just stay stagnant. But in this one, it just keeps on growing. So it's kind of like an amplification. If you have the lead and everyone goes off to play their end game strategies, you get more of a lead. And that part of it's really interesting.
What's crazy, though, is, story, Nick, is that, yes, they get more, but before, you'd have this trade-off. If you think about the 2012 game, what made 17-17 so good was they could forego a triple balance to score 9 balls, or whatever in the last couple seconds of the match. Here, if I'm just a wicked crazy cube scoring robot, and I just go, while everyone's playing endgame, I go score a whole lot of cubes, points I can get is dictated by the amount of time left in the match.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to get value from every one of those cubes. So if I flip the scale with 5 seconds left, I'm only getting a 10-point differential. If I flip a switch towards, I'm stopping them from accruing points. It's just this new sort of scoring thing that we have to get used to. Before it was I'm 16 Mason. When we played you guys GTR East, that was the big trade-off that 11-14 had to make. It's do we go for this hang or do we go for one more ball?
Right.
Here, it's almost always going to be let's more time to secure the hang. But these comebacks are harder to execute via cube scoring, and so that's why the power-ups become so valuable, and that's why the hangs and getting on the platform are so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So what level of play? This is a question from our chat from Space Loathers. What level of play do you guys think that we'll see robots climbing on top of each other, if ever? Do you guys think we'll see it?
I sure hope that nobody actually ever robots, because if you're doing that, you are not. I believe I just lost my camera. Hopefully, I can fix that in a second. But I
can still hear you, Nick.
That's good. Okay, good. You can hear me. Hopefully, the camera will come back in a second. But I really, really hope that nobody actually tries to lift 2 robots and ignores this giant, almost a gimme of the levitate bonus that exists for power-up.
Interesting you said, Mason, when we see teams climb robots. Another thing I had in my notes was, so this year, a lot of teams are designing around the fact that they might want to climb a platform or lift of some sort of structure. And because of the way these platforms are and they're angled, and for any team who follows the JVN blog, John had a great post about the importance of designing your drivetrain so you can cut corners over this platform, all those little things. Clearance, increasing your bumper heights also means your opponent just through normal driving and playing defense. And you hop on top of their bumpers, and there's some weird stuff that can happen there too. So it's just an unintended side effect that could be a thing.
So let me ask another question coming from our audience. This one's from Robotier 5291. What do you think scouting will be like? Will cube counts be scouted, or will somehow ownership be counted, or will the qualitative scouting be even more important than ever?
There for me for a bit, Mason. I missed that.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. It's a question from our audience from Robotier 5291 asking about what scouting is going to be like. Do you guys have thoughts on if and how you would be counting cubes or ownership?
I think I care about the time it takes for teams to do actions more than I care about how many cubes they actually score. I care about their average cycle time in this game. Ownership time, I don't care about. I can get that from match data. I don't care about actually having stopwatches for stuff like that. But being able to qualitatively and quantitatively determine who is the best at moving cubes at different positions around the field from point A to point B.
So I kind of coined this the 610 effect from last season, where 610 was so good at scoring gears last year. By the end of the season, their alliances were hitting 4 rotors super early, so they stopped scoring gears. Or their partners were contributing so much because of the strength of Ontario events, so they didn't score. Their gears per match started to actually go down. So it was important to watch their cycle time. Here, it's one thing, if you want to go for really advanced scouting to record super important data, 4 options for pickup location, which would be pile, or from the portal, or from either of the locations along the switch. The amount of time it takes them to score on one of the 3 locations, their switch, scale, opponent switch, or you have the exchange as well. So that way you're capturing a start and an end and a time. And that way you can kind of evaluate, because not all cycles are created equally in this game.
Right.
Similar to last year, how a lot of teams had to do some fudging. Like if you looked at, how many keepers per match 3310 was scoring, the fact that they were sniping 2 or 3 from opponents dropping them. So like their cycles, some cycles were super short, some cycles were long. And I think it's important to do that again this year.
I couldn't agree more with you guys. I think that rates are everything in this game. I mean, it's just how fast you complete actions and understanding those times. How you log that is definitely going to be a challenge. I'll leave up to the teams.
Stopwatches.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be crafty, but if you can evaluate how long it takes different teams to do different actions, I think that is extremely powerful for deciding how to play the game. And it's definitely something I've been thinking a lot the last few days about.
And this is also one advantage to big teams, because this is where, I remember in 2009, HOT was the first team that I ever saw that used an 18-person scouting team. They had 6 scouting robots scoring, 6 scouting robots being scored on, and then 6 scouting human players.
Wow.
Yeah, and like I thought we were doing it well with 11-14 by using 12, and like they took it to another level.
Jeez.
But having more people, because when you're doing rate-based scouting, you're definitely going to want to take some averages, because you're going to lose data along the way, especially with stopwatches and stuff.
Yeah.
So having more scouts to throw at a situation like this is better. But I still don't have a really good idea for coordination. And one thing, all this being said about scouting, we've talked about some complicated things to do. Robots, simple scouting is usually better than complicated things. So there's going to be a trade-off in scouting. Like the same sort of things exist. So.
And it's important to also, with this is a game of compatibility as well, right? And it's important to do your due diligence of exactly what a robot's abilities are, like where they can climb, who they can climb with, and doing not like the ridiculously silly, like how many sim motors do you have in your drivetrain kind of pit scouting, but actually going and talking to the teams and then revalidating what they say by what they do in matches as well. I think that's going to be, hopefully that's not overlooked, but doing your actual robot research of its archetype, I really hope that doesn't get lost.
Another thing, since we're talking about scouting and we're just having a good free-flowing discussion here, a lot of people have been saying, well, OPR is completely useless in this game, and going to be determining who the best cube scorer is in terms of cubes per match. Because the scoring system just doesn't reflect that. However, the scoring system will reflect play smart. So OPR could just be kind of will consistently score well in this game or doing something right. We don't necessarily know what they're doing right, but they're consistently doing something right. And so still have some positive benefits. It's never been an end-all be-all stat. Like, it's not the war of basketball or the war of baseball, but like it's always been pretty good. There's still value to be derived from it this year. Still need to. I might do like a separate talk on this in general, but like, there's going to be some value deciphered from it.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be interesting because wins are going to speak volumes about a team's success, because, you can win very difficult matches and you'll have lower scores, right? So that aspect of it is going to be, somewhat confusing to the first look. But, if you're winning a lot, it means you're playing every element of this game. It's not going to happen by accident in this tournament, I don't think.
I think we're kind of done with that match.
Yeah. Well, seeing the MCC stuff's really exciting. We've got, I've got a few thoughts kind of queued up here. I was really trying to think about, how would I treat this match if I was working with a team this year? If I was, as the coach of a team, what things would I be focusing on? And I think it's so important to start early with these brainstorms of these different ideas. And I think it's really important to let that influence some of your robot design, because how you play is really going to affect what your strategy is. And, for me, there was a couple key points to power up that I thought were just really important. And fortunately, we've kind of talked about all of them already. I mean, rates to me are the biggest thing. I call them rates. I think of it like calculus, that this isn't just about points. It's you're taking the differential with respect to time now, and you have to think of everything as how long does it take for an action or a point per second. I think, you go out there and you're going to see it takes 5 seconds on average for someone to get a cube. No matter where they are, whatever cube they're going for, that's how long it's going to take them. It's going to take them another 5 seconds to go score that cube. And you start to make these rules about what a team's going to take. And then when you get to a tournament and you're scouting, you're actually going to have real numbers to put on there. And that's going to be so incredibly valuable. I think that supply and demand starts to have an element in this game. I think we just talked about it with EveryBot, and how you have a robot who's going to the portal. They have 7 cubes in that portal. They put them on a switch. And now all of a sudden you have to take your pile that you were going to put mostly in your vault and put them back on your switch. Now you have to go find cubes from somewhere else to kind of backfill into the vault to catch up on the points that you thought you were going to get there. So that starts to be a really interesting dynamic in this game, and denying people where they wanted to go to be supplied by cubes could really change up some of the strategies. Karthik, you just said a second ago, there's 4 places to score in this game: the vault, your home switch, the scale, and your away switch, or the opponent's switch. I was really trying to think of a way at how to value the vault, and the best way I came up with was to put it into a rate. And for me, I think that comes out to be at 1 to 1.5 points per second whenever you add the value of the power up plus the value of those cubes going in there versus how long I think that action would actually take to get done, which is kind of cool because it lines right up really well with the value of a switch, or the value with the scale. I think the one cool caveat is the vault is constant, right? Every match it's going to get you the same amount of points, whereas the switch and scales, their values change. So in a more competitive match, whenever the scores are going to be lower because you're trading possession back and forth, that vault actually becomes more powerful. Same is true for the end game with hanging. So I thought that was kind of a really neat element to this game that, how it gets used maybe won't matter, but I thought it was kind of neat. The home switch, obviously I tried to highlight some things here and it doesn't really show up, but, it's pretty basic, but that's, 1 point per second. But, what's more simple about it is it's right in front of your driver and your views are so freaking good at it. I mean, this is the one place to score in the game where I think that your views don't stink. If I were to go back a slide, I think the vault, people are going to underestimate how hard it is for the drivers to see their robot whenever they're trying to push a cube in the vault. If you've ever been behind the glass, you know how anytime you're trying to line up on the wall that you're driving against, you have to put your face right up against the polycarb. You're leaning into it. It's extremely difficult to actually line up and see it. So you're actually going to be driving. Yeah, it's totally blind. So you're going to be you're going to have a lot harder time pushing a cube into it. Teams will train and they'll drive and they'll put cameras on. They'll find ways to make the vault a little bit easier. But I think because it's so close, everyone's just thinking it's going to be a cakewalk. And I think it's going to be more challenging than they realize.
Agreed.
Home switch is good. The scale, I think because this is a shared point, there's an added value to, if you're in a scale battle, anytime you're owning it, you're also denying your your opponent's points they could be getting on it. So, it has that neutral state where, nobody is getting an advantage to it. But when you're getting points on that and you're in a match against people who can also score on the scale, you're also taking points away from them. And I think that's really, really valuable. And it's also, really important to recognize that, to change the possession of the scale, you actually have to get that extra cube on there. So if blue were to put 1 cube on, they take possession. Well, red's got to come back. They got to put 1 cube on it. Now it's neutral. They got to put a 2nd cube on it to get it back onto their possession. So if you lose, it's a race to the scale. And if you lose that race, that means that you have to bring it back to neutral, and then you have to bring it back to your side. So you have to score 2 cubes. The other alliance only has to score 1 to bring it back to their possession. So they get a huge advantage there.
I can interrupt you here, Mason. That's assuming that both those placed in the exact same spot. It is possible to place cubes on this field such that there are, and we saw it in a cube bouncing on the fence. I'm gonna bring my camera back up here. It's possible to place 2 cubes on the scale, 1 on each side, where the scale is still tipped to the side. If the cube is closer to the fulcrum front on one point, it can still be tipped to ownership with the same amount of cubes on it.
Yeah, so I hope we see some cool mechanisms on robots trying to deal with that. I've definitely heard a lot of teams talking about shooting cubes and worrying about the accuracy if they're going to want to be able to be more particular placers of those cubes up on the scale.
Now, I really think that the placement is more of a top 10, maybe top 15% team problem, and I hope it does not distract the average team who should really just be focusing on the rates that they can score, because I think they'll be more successful by just getting cubes up there faster than they can try to place them precisely.
I mean, the old saying goes, you got to learn how to walk before you can run. So you got to figure out how to score on the scale reliably before you start worrying about where you're putting it on the scale.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And for me, it's just something to get really excited about, looking at these, advanced matches down the road of how teams are going to be fighting over this and how much value really comes from winning a scale early in the match and what kind of big hole it is that you have to dig yourself out of if you're losing on that scale and you are in a match where you're going to be fighting over it for the whole time. The scale, and then what did I do? Okay, and then the other scoring place, of course, is the away switch, which, unlike the scale where you're trying to get back possession and you have to do that, you score 1 to get it to neutral and another 1 to get it into your possession. On this one, you just have to deny them ownership of it. So you're really, if they put 1 cube on it, all you got to do is place that 1 other cube. To Nick's point, assuming I'm making the assumption on all this that you're placing them, relatively at the same points.
That's still valid.
And it's just really interesting because, by taking that one action of taking away their ownership, now they've got to come back and do something different. And so having 3 robots with 4 places to score means that, if you're fighting over these different spots, you can't be everywhere at once. Someone's gonna have to double up on jobs. If you are an alliance that is not trying to take ownership of something the other alliance has, then they're no longer in this situation where they're trying to score in 4 different places. They can be in a position where they're only trying to score in 2 different places or 3. So if you're letting them have a free ownership of something, and maybe on a scale you can't help it, but certainly on the switches, I'm hoping a lot of people who are watching the show are interested in, building robots that can at least do the switches. If you're not chasing down, trying to take back ownership of things, you're just letting that other alliance have freebies, and they can come after you because they don't have to keep.
And you touched on something that I think is really important. So there's 4 different scoring locations with 3 robots on an alliance, and you're always going to be not pursuing an option,
right,
in the match. So teams need to start flowing out what a match might look like to say, okay, if they are doing A, B, and C, what should we be doing? What if they're doing A, B, B? Because there's going to be sometimes where you have 2 robots on something. And so that's where you're talking about how this is a coach's game. And that's a huge part of it, is to adapt your strategies mid-match to make sure things mesh. And opponent's always going to have an advantage, but they're always going to have a disadvantage based on how this is going. And it's about taking it's about maximizing your advantage while minimizing your disadvantage, and then using your power-ups to help, which are almost like multipliers for these advantages and disadvantages.
Right, but I like to think of power-ups too, like especially with force. It's a chance to get out of a hole. If you got dug a hole, you mismanaged something for a little bit, you kind of get that 10-second timer to repair some of the damage. And I think that's really neat, that aspect is there, and to see how teams use it. A little bit more on the away switch and scoring that. I was trying to think through, like a scenario where on the blue switch, it's blue switch, they have possession, they put one cube up there, red comes over, that every bucket town comes over, and then they drop a cube. That blue robot who really put it there probably went and started doing vault work, because they're the home robot. I think that's what a lot of alliances are going to say. It's like, you're the home robot, your job is this switch and these cubes, put them in the vault. Well, now that robot, their switch has been challenged, they have to immediately drop what they're doing at the vault, which means they're no longer generating vault points, which I valued at 1 to 1.5 points per second, and they have to go back and they have to take their switch, which, I was earlier saying, like, that's 5 seconds to pick up a cube, 5 seconds to score it, so that's 10 seconds. So all of a sudden, you've lost 10 seconds of vault point generation, and you lost 10 seconds of getting your own switch. That's a big 20-point swing for Red Alliance coming over there and doing one task. So then I think the Blue Alliance needs to think a little bit smarter about buffers, and buffers are this idea that I think, Nick, you touched on earlier about how many extra cubes do you put on a plate to make sure that, when someone comes over, it doesn't immediately flop sides. And the buffer is really an interesting concept, because if you buffer too much, you're wasting supply, you're wasting time.
Yep.
But if you don't buffer enough, then things get switched before you have a chance to respond.
And scouting the rate at which that your opponents can score is what's going to help you figure out what that buffer number is. If you know that it's going to take your opponent twice as long as you to place cubes, then okay, you have one buffer number. Whereas if they're even with you, then you probably need a bigger buffer if you have an opportunity to have that.
And I'm going to get really deep into strategy here, but there's also a psychological effect with the buffer that you want to manage. Because if you're going to force your opponent to use cubes to keep trying to catch up to you, but they're not going to catch up. If you overwhelm the switch right up, you go and grab 7 cubes from the portal, gust that switch off, they're going to give up on the switch. So the switch is done, which now changes them from having 4 places to score to 3 places to score, which changes everything else. So
yes,
be said about obliterating and taking something over. On the other hand, you want to leave them a little like you're being like evil. You're being like a evil serial killer, someone who's torturing someone. Where you want to frame the game they're playing in is what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
I'm stopping you from going down too far with that analogy. That wasn't a dark place.
But so much of this is about, it's a call response. It's a leader and a follower, and you want to be on the alliance that's leading it and defining what game is getting played in that tournament. And at some point, we'll get to matches where both lines are effectively trying to fight for leadership of the match, and that's going to be really, really cool. I wanted to show too, on this, these are some screenshots I grabbed. There's some really cool VR simulations out there that people have put up, kind of showing the field. And, what really struck me when I watched this video was, if I'm on the Red Alliance here and I want to go to the away switch and I want to try to take possessions, it's random which of the 3 driver stations I get in. At least I know that going into the match. So if I'm on one of these sides, then I got to worry about the randomness of which side of the away switch is going to be mine. And you can see that scale in the middle there is blocking one of the sides. So if this shakes out this way and you thought your job was going to be to go far, you don't have a great view. We can kind of see the other side of it here. And now I know this centerpiece has some polycarb on it. It's not actually black, so you'll probably be able to see a little bit better, but I think this is actually going to be a big effect in the game is the randomness of which plate gets assigned, and how that might change the roles of which robot is playing downfield or not.
I was at kickoff this year and I saw the field in person, and the visibility problem that this image shows is actually there because of the glare that shiny piece of polycarbonate is going to present. If there's lighting that is positioned, unfortunately, for your sight line, that there's going to be this giant glare on that shiny piece of plastic that basically it might as well be opaque because you won't be able to see through it anyways.
That reminds me, Nick, you were a driver in 2008. I know you dealt with this. Was the ghosting in, like, the field had a wall in the center and it was covered with polycarb. And if depending on what driver station you were in, the lighting, you would see ghosts. You would see reflections of robots, and you'd swear there was a robot there, and it was like the most confusing thing.
It was so disorienting, Karthik.
Yeah, like it was. Yeah, that's. The visibility issues on the field are frustrating because I mean I think some of it would go away if they didn't have these 8-bit panels covering stuff up, and it was just like, you know, the skeleton and whatever. But it is what it is. I mean, visibility things are always going to be an issue when you have giant scoring structures, which you want because giant scoring structures are cool. Are going to have to play well on the opponent's switch. You're going to have to, you know.
Yeah, and also to note are the cubes too. Like, you know, if you look at this, the cubes just on the other side of my switch, my home switch, or the ones by the away switch, they're really well hidden as well. You know, you look at lining up to ramps, you know, that maybe are deployed on the carpet area. You know, there's some serious challenges with the visibility on this field, which, you know, it's just part of it. So the other, you know, big scoring mechanism in this game is facing the boss. And, you know, I like to think of it as most people are going to get that levitate, which means for an alliance, if they put two robots to go up and face the boss at 30 seconds left, it kind of ends up being a 2 points per second trade-off, you know. And this is back to me trying to put everything into rates so that I can kind of compare the different elements of the game. You know, I think hanging is a big part. I think, of course, for ranking points, there's that element of it. And so I started playing with, you know, these different, you know, match simulations by, you know, just putting a 1 in the right box to say who had possession of these different elements, and started, you know, creating little fake matches in my head of who is taking possession when, and you know, one robot went for the scale and the Blue Alliance wanted to come back. Red got an early, in this particular one, you know, Red got an early scale lead, and so to fight that, Blue went and tried to take Red's switch and took control back of that, and that kind of allowed them to catch back up in this match. And I don't think Blue ever got a scale in this match, and this was trying just to show that you can keep things tight for a while, and then eventually Red kept the scale possession for those last 40 seconds and really kind of ran away with the match there. And it's just kind of fun to go through and see, because it's such a different element, because everything's in rates, you know, how the score grows over time. And so I think, you know, teams could really take this to the next level, to spend a little bit more time on it, either by acting it out or, you know, just using something as simple as Excel to really map out some cool strategy ideas. And what I'm really curious on how teams will take something like building a tool and taking it with them to competition, to try to lay out, you know, how much time is left. You know, Karthik and Nick both touched on this, you know, what is that right number of buffers? And you know, Karthik is the math person on this group, in case you guys didn't know this at home, not me. But if I were to try to make sense of what you wanted to know, I would use this great scouting data that we're all talking about collecting. I would try to create some kind of equation of how many cycles do I need to be ahead of the person, and that helps me know how much buffer I need. And then I can say how much match time do I really need to respond. And then you start to use an equation like this, and you set it up before the match, so you can look across and see the other person switch and say they've got 4 extra cubes in their buffer on their switch. That's going to take me 60 seconds to overcome that. I'm not even going to bother. It's not worth it. Let them have it.
Right.
You know, or it helps you say, you know, because they're so much faster than me at the scale, if I'm going to have any chance, I've got to get 3 or 4 extra cubes on there. And you start to weigh that in at which point is left in the match. And I think you could have some really interesting logic rules set up in your head of how many extra cubes you see on on a plate before you abandon it or before you fight for it, or how much your alliance is going to go to defend that.
And there's a little bit of carryover for this abandoned ship ideology you're talking about to last year. I mean, last year there was a point in the match where you had to evaluate, when do I stop bothering for the 4 rotors, or when do I even bother with how much time I have left and what my cycle time is. There's a lot of lessons learned from 2017 that I think people could apply to the number of cubes they should be placing and which locations they should go after at different points in the match.
I mean, we're getting really deep into it, which is cool because I think this is a great discussion to have. The other thing that needs to be talked about is, in this equation here, is you have to look at cube availability, especially on the switches. So on your own switch, you have access to 16 cubes right around it. However, you're going to be using some of these cubes for your exchange, maybe 9 of them, maybe not. On the other side of the switch are hard to see. Also, you might want to be allocating those towards the scale. Have, 11, if everyone uses a preload, right there in the portals. Access to all that. And that's why, and they have easy access to them because they're from the portal. You could, right. If you have that ability, if you're a robot which is optimized to grab from the portal, you can make quick work of it. And that's why your own switch, when you first see this game, you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to get my switch right away in auto and just have it. Like, yeah, you might take a lead on your switch in auto, but that might disappear really quickly because it is, opponent has the cube advantage in this area. So at a certain point, you might just see you might be playing with this equation and then also see the cube advantage, and that may impact your abandoned ship.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's so cool that there's this level of depth that we can go into. Like obviously you don't have to use it for every match, but I guarantee that some of these hot teams are going to be searching for ways to make sense of it. Ultimately for me, it came down to these kind of basic elements, and what's great is I don't feel like I'm alone anymore because you guys hit on the exact same things. If you want to decrease your allies and yourself, your cycle time, find a way to make your go down. You want to find ways to increase your opponent's cycle time, whether that be through supply and demand, whether that's through playing defense at the right times. If you look at your scouting data and the other alliance is just faster, you have to find a way to make them slower or make yourselves faster. But I think there are a lot of ways to make them slower in this game. It really comes down to this game as leader and follower. One alliance is going to be the leader, the other's a follower, and the one who's the leader is probably going to win. So coming out early starts making a huge difference. Coming out of autonomous with a plan, your alliance goes in attacks. I think it'll be really cool when we see 3 robots rush one switch to try to get a buffer up really high, really early, so that they can go do things as a collective whole. I think it's going to be really cool whenever you have the strategic double teams to go out after something. And what I hit on earlier, really I think is important, is that if you're playing, to win your matches, if you are not pestering or trying to distract the other alliance, you're going to enable them to get point generation from 2 or more places, either by denying you your points or them getting yours. So you have to be constantly, interacting with the other alliance's possessed components of the game. And I think that's, going to end up being a real key to victory for a lot of these alliances. I had a few quick. Yeah, so I think that's a good place to stop with these ideas here today. I have some more that maybe we'll talk about next time, which is like how I would strategize for these matches, going into actually what I would do personally at a tournament. But I think that would be best to say for another time at this point.
Moment. I think we've given teams a lot here, and so I understand. We're into. It was a week 3 now already.
Yeah, it's first Monday.
But there's a lot of teams who haven't finalized exactly their designs yet, and so we've been talking about this all in terms of match strategy.
Yeah,
we've talked about apply to your strategic design. So if you're going to go back to your team meetings tomorrow and you haven't finalized your design direction, concepts and decreasing alliance cycle time, how you can do that most efficiently, and what you want to prioritize. And we're like the advertising group for MCC at this point. We're talking about the Everybot.
Yeah, right. Well, we got cut, right?
Give me the cut of the no money that these MCC groups are making. But I think it's really important, especially if you haven't started anything yet. There's more incentive to simplify, given how valuable a simple, effective kind of switch robot is. So think about it. Like I said, Bucketown's a cool place to be. I'm gonna try and get myself elected as mayor of Bucketown. So.
All right, so we got a bunch of questions here. I kind of let these, back up. So we're going to go in rapid fire mode. Okay, guys? You can handle this. Yeah, so I'm just going to start jumping through these, and you guys give me your first gut reaction that comes through. From Boltman, how much of a factor will triple climbs be on the small platform?
Why are you triple climbing?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Smart, good answer. All right, from the class, I think you go for it, Karthik.
Yeah, some people use triple climb to mean they're including the levitate as the virtual climb. So if that's what he meant, then But why are you? If there's 3 robots going up, it's kind of like, what is the 3rd robot doing?
Yeah.
All right, before we hit any more questions, we've been going a little bit late, and I forgot we got a bunch of really cool stuff to give away, so we got to give away these back. Tyler, can you get going on the giveaway? I think you can give the instructions for what people need to do.
Yeah, I can jump in here, guys, and thank you so much for bearing with us. We know we're having some leg issues, and it's been kind of the weird gremlins tonight. But for everybody sticking with us, you are in luck. You're going to have an opportunity to win a awesome set of Bat Hawks, once again donated by 1720. That we thank you very much for that, because these are really awesome. If you haven't had a chance to check these out, make sure you do. And if you don't win them, you check them out. You can purchase them at andymark.com. And to win, all you got to do is make sure you follow or subscribe and type in voltage. Voltage is the keyword. Make sure you type it in the chat. You can type as many times as you want. You only get 1 entry, but type in voltage, and we'll get back to the questions. Thanks, Mason.
All right, voltage. Okay, boys. What auto? What's the significance of auto in this game?
We need a whole show just for.
And what's your favorite auto strategy?
5 straight. Across that line, that's it. The auto ranking point is super important. Nick and I touched on it earlier. The coordination between 3 teams is valuable, and an exciting answer. Just wait until the high end autos. When you start seeing a team score on the scale and the switch, I've heard of teams talking about trying to make sure they score 3 cubes at least when they have a convenient plate assignment. So. That's going to be if you think of the 2-cube auto pass, scale plus switch.
Yeah, I'm over some 2014 level metagame auto going down with trying to get to the switch first and unbalancing it against somebody. Okay, what does this game have? This comes from out of thought. Does this game have more potential than usual for the top 2 best robots at the tournament to pair up and dominate through the playoffs?
Yes.
So I think their top 2 might pair up. However, I think that or a district event where you have that severe drop-off, the drop-off point around 17 or 18, which happens a lot. That means the number 1 alliance is going to get a robot that may not be able to score cubes with their 2nd pick. Mm-hmm. They are primed for an upset, a la 2013 style games, where a very workman alliance can, with 3 consistent scorers, can really make you pay. Because what we were talking about, 4 places to score, only 3 robots. But if you only have 2 robots that are scoring, then you're in some trouble. See at those types of events what kind of cheesecake's going on. Will people be cheesecaking buckets? You just kind of Nick pointed it out during the MCC match. Toss a cube on top of a robot, they drive until they hit the scale. Make something happen that way. So. Events where you can get a 3rd robot that is in every bot that can just kill a scale, then number 1 alliance has these huge advantages. But when that doesn't exist, upsets.
What's the best advice you would give to a new coach, a new drive coach this year?
This is a game that may seem overwhelming at some point. Just stay focused and know which places to abandon. As soon as you figure that out, abandon it as soon as you can and focus on what you still can be effective at.
What's your favorite power-up?
I did not hear that question.
What's your
Power
favorite
up is boost because it sounds cool.
I like levitate because it allows a lower, so to speak, resource team able to contribute to a ranking point by doing alternate actions. I think we lost Mason's microphone finally. I think it finally kicked the bucket here. That's unfortunate. Yeah, sure.
I'm jumping to try and find the next question. For coaches, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's try this one. What do you think the most common climbing strategy amongst Elimination Alliances is going to be?
Interesting. Most common climb strategy, probably by averages, is probably going to be one robot, because just of the availability of compatible robots. But I would hope that it's something along the lines of your second best cube score is the one that is climbing and pulling their third robot up with maybe a cheesecake bar or some other means, and you have your best cube score on the ground managing to switch and scale to the very end of the match and using that levitate bonus. That's what I hope happens.
Yeah, I think early in the season, the most common is going to be one robot climbing, one robot levitated, one robot up for 5.
Yep.
Our good friend __, it seems that ranking points outside of win-loss tie are de facto part of FRC now. Is that a positive thing? Do you prefer the 2018 style where both bonus RPs require all 3 Alliance members to participate? Or the 2016-17 style where one ranking point could potentially be accomplished solo? Love the bonus ranking point objectives. I think they really help because you get 12 matches with the random partners and whatever. Win-loss is just not a perfect determining factor. So I like that there's extra ways. The ones require 3 team members to work together because that's just cool in general for first. However, I also loved last year that one robot could go and get that RP in auto. The best robots were seating high, so I prefer the hybrid mode where if I were king for a day, I would have one ranking point that a single robot could shotgun and one ranking point that has to be a group objective.
I agree. I think it definitely adds to the sorting and definitely really does help bring out who's really best in the field. I don't really have much else other to say because you hit on all the points of why this is a good thing.
Speaking of RPs, how do you feel about ranking objectives not translating to bonus points during the elims?
I'm kind of torn on this. I think maybe first was a little sensitive to the giant 100-point swing, and we know a lot of things in first, like defense and such, they're a pendulum, where 2014 we had a very defensive-heavy game, and people were kind of upset that it was almost something akin to BattleBots, so we had a non-contact game. I think this is a pendulum thing where they tried to balance the game by removing something out of it again.
Yeah, I think that so I'm going to look at the 2 ranking points separately. The autonomous one, I think that is pretty common. So they're hoping that maybe it just kind of washes out that they were thinking both alliances are going to get it, so there shouldn't be that bonus point. And then realistically, it might end up being a situation where it's who misses, and you don't really want to be rewarding someone for that sort of thing. So I'm okay with that one going away. And I'm okay with there being no bonus points for the climb, because I think if there was, it would overvalue the elims and diminish cube scoring. And I'm never a fan when endgame is so overvalued, because I think this great cube scoring dynamic in the 4 locations, I wouldn't want to see that minimized in the elims. Also, if endgame was super overvalued, where it's a lot of defense early and then climb, which is not fun. If you look at the 2007 game, that's what Einstein was. It was like a mess for a minute and 30, and then the last 30 seconds was people hopping on ramps, and it was just like, it was ugly.
Yeah, definitely.
Would having the role of the technician change and or manipulate gameplay? I don't think it changes anything.
It
Nick?
doesn't. No, it doesn't change anything. I mean, they're not supposed to be involved in the individual match strategy during the match. They're not supposed to be coaching or whatever. Maybe it's nice to have another set of eyes on your pre-match strategy within queue, but I rather would have that person be super technically competent for any control system issues or robot issues that might arise. That's what that role is for.
Yeah, I mean, like they basically, like that role before you was like an unofficial thing. You'd have the one, kid on the side of the field who'd be like, "Hey, go get a battery," and then he'd go fetch the battery. So the battery dog is now the technician.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that one scout could keep track of both alliances' power-up usage? Also, Karthik, did you see the remix my friend made of you from Michael One? Ooh. Remix. It was hilarious. One scout can manage the power-ups?
Yes and no. It depends on what you're trying to see. If you're just trying to see, like, time that it was played and sort of which ones they played, maybe. I would rather probably have one scout dedicated to it because I care about their strategy when they're playing the power-ups, not just the fact did they play them or not. I also care about I care a lot about when they played and are they smart about playing Force? Like, are they playing Force when they own both their scoring locations that produce points for them? Yes? No?
I think it would be better to have more than one, but I mean, I'm crossing my fingers here. I'm really crossing my fingers that there's going to be a lot of data coming out of the API this year.
Yeah.
Like last year, it told us, that, how many rotors were achieved. It would have been even cooler if there was a timestamp on when the rotors were achieved. And so
that would have been awesome.
Clearly, I'm sure they're going to tell us which power-ups were played in a match, but I mean, it's all sensor-based. They know when a cube is being put in there, and they know when the button's push, so it would be great if that was output. But, that's just my request to anyone who's listening out there.
Anybody?
Jake.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely being able to see that API data would definitely alleviate a lot of these somewhat resource-intensive scouting things, to be honest.
So I think that is all the questions we have. So before we wrap tonight's show, and again, we want to apologize that we started late. We really do value your time, and we wanted to get started on time. We just had some technical difficulties. Sorry we didn't play the YMCA for you guys during the delay, but, these things happen. So before we wrap it up, Hawks, Tyler, let us know who the lucky winner is.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and roll for that. And we have the Bathawk up on the screen, so make sure you do check that out. Thanks to 1720, once again, for donating that. And the winner for this is going to be somebody who just subscribed today, Sama2006. Congratulations, you have won the Bathawk. Make sure you PM me your information so we can get everything out to you. And thanks again to Fixed Gears for the awesome donation of the Bathawk.
Thank you, Tyler. And that's going to wrap up our episode of FUNalysis. If you have some feedback, you have more questions, hit us up on Discord, Facebook, Chief Delphi, so we can make this content tailored to what you want. We're going to be back next month with a show, and we'd love to hear your ideas of what you would love us to be talking about at that point. Fun Recap is our next show with guest Jim Zondag from the Killer Bees. So Zondag's one of the most exciting guys and the most excitable people in First. You're going to want to tune in for that. That's Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Nick, anything you want to talk about before we go?
I think this was a lot of fun. It was really fun to get into this level of strategy really early with people outside of my own team. I just thought it was really fun. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat robots with you guys. It was awesome.
Chatting robots with you, man. And just on behalf of Mason, thanks for everything. Tyler, great job today, especially with the extenuating circumstances. Moderators in chat, shout out to Caltran. And guys, we'll see you next time on Fun. Have a good night and enjoy your robots.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.